Miss Linda Miller. How are you? And good night. So we have a little slideshow here. Let's see it. Okay, perfect. It works. So you all know Linda from a very specific film. But she did a couple other things as well, and I put together a little slideshow highlighting some sequences that you may not recognize from Linda. So let's give that a try. And thank you, Andre, for the sound.
Hello? This is Louise. I think my husband's getting suspicious. So instead of picking me up at the apartment, meet me in our usual place. Usual place? Right. Listen, he's in the next room, so I better go now. See you later.
So Linda, you might want to tell everyone what that little intro was. The guy on the phone.
When I came back from Japan, I enrolled in acting school, and I, would go out on interviews, and I interviewed for a producer, I'll never forget his name, Edmund Harton, who was, I didn't know it at the time, but he was the uncle of my very best friend. And so he gave me the part in My Three Sons, which got me my SAG card. So I was so thrilled. I thought, oh, I'm going to meet Fred McMurray and Robbie, and I was just so excited. So I get to work the first day, and I'm on the sound stage all by myself. All of my scenes were on the telephone. And the story was Robbie and I were planning his wife's surprise birthday party, and it sounded like we were having an affair. His brothers thought we were having an affair. So that was the whole premise of the TV show. But I was disappointed because I thought I was going to meet everybody, and I was just completely all by myself.
The title of the episode was The Other Woman.
The Other Woman.
And because you are a looker and still a looker, I immediately thought, is she playing the other woman? And like, did you know?
I didn't know the name of the show, but I knew once I got the script, I went, oh, I see why they called it The Other Woman. Yes, but I was not. I was a good girl.
And that was post King Kong Escapes,
Yes.
right? That was after.
That was like, I got back to the States in '68, maybe that was 1970 or 71, because after this, shortly thereafter, I got out of the business.
So we'll get to that too in a second. But for those who may not be familiar with you, why don't you give a little backstory and how you got incorporated into King Kong Escapes, but how you ended up in Japan,
Okay.
how you ended up being a model,
Okay. It's a long story.
the classic story.
Yeah, long story. My dad was in the Air Force, so I grew up all over the world. We lived in France, we traveled to Germany, Austria, all different kinds of places. I lived all over the United States. I lived in Texas and Georgia, Pennsylvania and Michigan and Oklahoma. So I lived everywhere. So when I was in 11th grade, well, I was in 10th grade, and I found out my dad was going to be stationed overseas. And I wanted to be an interpreter in the UN in Spanish. I did not know how awesome that would have been, but so I said to my dad, please put in for Spain, because I want to go to the University of Madrid. So as the military often does, they sent him to Japan instead. So then what happened was, he left in February, and I wanted to finish. I skipped a grade. I took summer school, and I skipped a grade. And so he went to Japan in February. I graduated May or June, I can't remember. And our flight left the day of my high school graduation. So I know, I was really talking about that. But on the way, my mom and I drove with my cat all the way from Oklahoma to San Francisco, and we stopped on the way in Las Vegas. And the interesting thing was, we went to see a couple shows. Do you guys remember the singer Eddie Fisher?
Yeah.
Who was there to listen to him? Okay.
It's Carrie Fisher's dad.
Yeah, Carrie
Right,
Fisher's dad, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who that is around here.
So we stopped in Vegas, we went to a show, we're standing in line, and a fellow came up to my mom and said, you two sit down front. So he escorted us down front, and then Eddie Fisher sang to me, and there was a spotlight on me, and I was hooked. You know, it was kind of one of those transformative moments where I went, oh, I really like this. So we go to Japan, and the day we arrived, my dad tells me that the girl I used to, this is a long story, but the girl I used to live next door to in France, who was my age, was having a graduation party. So I went to the graduation party, and I met another girl there who is shorter than I am, and I'm pretty short. And she was bragging about how much money she made being a model, bought her school clothes, bought, just all these things, and I thought, I looked at her and I thought, damn, if she can do it, I think I could do it. So you had to go, the system was you went to a charm school that was run by an ex-TWA stewardess or somebody like that. So went and enrolled and learned how to put on makeup. They tried to teach me how to walk, but I was not good at that. But very shortly after I enrolled, I wound up starting working as a model. And my first modeling job was for an accordion company. They had a magazine, and they put me in a bathing suit on the cover of the magazine, which makes no sense to me, but that was how I got started. So I worked. I did a TV show called English for Millions, which is actually still on the air. I found it when I was in Japan. It's still on the air, and what they did is they piped it into the junior high school classes to teach them how to, the proper way to say your words and how to speak English. So then I did a radio show. I was a disc jockey once.
Do you have all these? Are some of these things lost, or have you come across them?
I have some of the pictures I meant to send you.
For next year.
Yeah.
Oh, I will say, a lot of these photos have not been seen before. Linda was so nice to send me some photos that she came across recently that I added into the slideshow. So if you see a new photo up there you've never seen before, odds are it's because you just found it.
Yeah. So anyway, I wound up getting a contract. This will make sense to me. I wound up getting a contract for a weekly Young Girls magazine for the cover. There were two of us, and we would switch off every week. And sometimes we'd do the cover together, but we would switch off every week. And because of one of the covers, I don't know which one, that Arthur Rankin saw that cover, found out I was in Japan, and after somehow found out how to get a hold of me and called me on the phone out of the clear blue, introduced himself. And I've been living in Japan, so I knew nothing about Rankin Bass Productions. Because we didn't have really good TV. If I wanted to watch I Love Lucy dubbed in Japanese, that was about as good as it got. So he said, I want to talk to you about a movie I'm doing. And I said, well, what about? He said, I want you to star in my movie. And I thought it was crazy, you know, because I said, well, I've never acted, so I don't think I'm the person. But he convinced me, and we got together, and he took me to a really fancy restaurant. I've never been to a fancy restaurant before. He took me to this fancy restaurant. We sat down and talked. And I was kind of leery, because I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what
He's on the level. No funny business.
Yeah. I found that out. Thank God. So he was telling me about the movie, and he explained to me that when he saw the cover, in his mind, that was Susan Watson. Had nothing to do with any talent. And, you know, it's just, I had the look that he wanted. And I tried to persuade him not to hire me because I said, I'm going to ruin your movie. I'm going to embarrass myself. And I said, it's going to be on film forever. And, but he said, no, you'll be just fine. You'll just be fine. He said, it's not that taxing of a job. You'll be just fine. So I said, okay. And that's how I got the part. Did not audition or anything.
Had you been familiar with the original King Kong up until that time?
1933.
Yeah. What did you know before making King Kong Escapes? Did you know about that genre, kaiju genre, or just monster movies in general? Is that something you were even interested in at all? Okay.
I remember coming home from school, and on the matinees we would have for the kids coming home from school, I saw the original King Kong, Dracula, which scared me to death, and Frankenstein. Those were like the three that I saw. So when he told me about Tokyo Tower, then I could relate to it because of what I'd seen with it's in New York.
Empire State.
Empire State Building, yes.
You actually gave your entire process of how you ended up in the film. In modern times, when you watch K-dramas or another film, you see that Western foreigner, and me and my best friend always leans in and goes, how did they get there into that film? Do you ever have that moment and think, I know the exact process because that's how I ended up as the Western foreigner in that film?
Yes, I did a convention I talked to Peggy Neal. I never met Peggy, but when she was invited to G-Fest, Avery suggested she call me. So I knew of Avery. I had never met Avery. But so Avery said, is it okay if she calls? So I gave my number, she called me. And we talked, about her experience in Japan and how this just kind of happened for her like it happened for me. So it's kind of like, felt like we were sisters because we had such similar experiences. And so I assured her, because I had been here in 2016 and she was 18 or something, 18, 19. So I told her how wonderful the bands were and everything. So we talked about that, and I talked to her a couple times before she passed as well. But Linda, I'm so terrible with names. She was in, Linda
Hamilton?
No, not Hamilton. Anyway, there was another, I think it was a Toho movie she was in.
Latitude Zero.
But, huh?
You're talking about Latitude Zero?
Yes, that lady. And, but she auditioned in the States and they sent her over. So Peggy Neal and I had very similar experiences.
So the first time you go onto the Toho set to film this movie, what was going through your head?
I was scared.
Yeah.
I was so scared. I was scared that I put on a good face. My mom, I was 19 at the time, and my mom was with me every day. I'm an only child, so my mom was very protective. And I was so glad to have her there. Because I was, at that time, when you walk through the gates, this was Toho. And I knew that Toho was the premier studio in Japan. And I felt incredibly lucky, I felt afraid, I felt excited, and it kind of, first week it kind of went downhill from there. Because then I had to actually perform, and I was scared out of my mind. The very first scene in the movie after the submarine, where I walk in and I salute the Castle Royal scene. I don't know how many times we did that take. That was the very first scene, and my knees were shaking, and I felt so embarrassed, and I thought, they are going to fire me for sure. And I really seriously thought the first week or two, I was waiting for them to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. You were right, you don't belong in this movie.
Don't feel bad, because Charlie Chaplin went through the exact same thing when he got hired in Keystone in 1914. He thought for sure he was going to get fired. He thought everybody hated him. So you're in good company.
Well, Rhodes and Takarada-san, they wound up being really good friends. But Rhodes would kind of coach me, kind of took me under his wing. And he said to me, don't go to the dailies, don't go see yourself every day. But I did, I went. And one time, and I said, I know why. He said, don't go to see them. Because there's no music, there's nothing. It's just raw film. And it looks awful. So I stopped going after that.
Johnny Depp, I think, said the same thing. That he never sees, I mean, this is probably a lie, but he says that he never sees his own movies because he hates looking at himself on the big screen. So again, you're in good company, and those feelings that you have are valid even in the biggest stars on the planet, you know?
Chris Evans says the same thing for Captain America.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he's so anxious and knowing what the character needs that he just doesn't. He goes to the premiere and sometimes he'll just skip out watching the film.
Wow.
It's an awful experience. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity. I was so grateful. I was so lucky. I was so fortunate. But it was horrible seeing yourself on screen because you see, oh, I should have done it this way, or I should have done that, and oh my God, the way it was just a horrible experience.
Well, something I noticed when they showed the film at Pickwick the other night was that, so you have Rhodes and you have Takarada, and then Linda, in some shots, you barely get her chin in the bottom of the frame, and it's total scope, so it's a lot, but she's down here, I'm like, they couldn't have just panned out a little bit so she can have, breathing room on screen. All Schwarzenegger-sized guys, and then, hi, down here.
And that's how it felt. That's how it felt.
And so you were on set, outside of the scenes that you shot. You got a little curious and were wandering around the set one day. She comes across Nakajima dressed as Kong in the scene where Doctor Who is, was it bombing King Kong, gassing him, knocking him out?
His henchman.
His henchman.
This was between takes, and I just was kind of touring around and went into one of the sound stages, and that's where they had the special effects, which was so awesome. Everything was like up on a platform. You see these little trees, these little houses, these little everything. And if you like scoot down and kind of look, you can say, wow, that looks really, really real. So I stayed there a while and watched them, and I saw the scene where they're throwing the gas bombs at Kong. He passes out, and the helicopter ties his legs up, or not the helicopter, but they tie his legs up, and the helicopter takes him away. I actually watched that being filmed, and it was, excuse me, it was incredible.
What was your perception of Nakajima and everybody that was working on that film in that aspect of the special effects department? Did you have any sort of preconceived notion on what that would look like, or is it you had ever expected to run into that aspect of the filmmaking process?
I wondered, I thought, how the heck are they going to get me in his hand? How the heck are they going to do all this stuff? Because I had no concept. At that time, it was a blue screen, and then I thought, well, how is Kong and this man who was about my size in a suit, how is he going to be a big, scary monster? And I had no concept of that at all. And then when I saw the special effects, I went, oh, I kind of got it. But when I ran into Nakajima on the lot, he was in his suits, and he was just like, so small, He was like my size, but then when I had to do the scenes where I did Clown's hand, they had this big mechanical hand that was extremely uncomfortable. It was really hard. And I had to sit in it, and then they would raise it up, and then the screen behind me was all blue, and I had to do whatever it was I had to do at that time. And so I was very curious to see how it was going to look on film, and amazed.
Did you see the film when it was released?
Yes.
And you were in Japan still at that time.
I went to the Tokyo premiere, and it was really exciting, you know, how they have the lights and, you know. And so I went with my parents, and I saw the Japanese version, and the voice that they gave me in Japanese was great. I was very happy with that, you know. I mean, I spoke Japanese, and I had kind of wished they would let me, you know, speak my part in Japanese, but I probably thought I spoke better than they thought I spoke. So that was the only time I really saw the film on the big screen.
Now, after all this, did Toho ever contact you about doing anything else?
No.
Green Slime, obviously.
Well, that was Toei.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But did you have any interest in continuing?
Well, see, we wrapped in like June, and we left Japan in February. So I was kind of like winding down from everything. I was not approached to do anything more. But I was approached. My agent said they were thinking about doing a TV series they wanted me to be in. But I said, I'm going home, you know. So I was 19, but I was a really young 19. Really protected a lot by my folks, especially because my dad being an officer in the military, nobody was allowed to date me. I said, Daddy, he's cute. He said, no, he's off limits. So I found out that my dad actually went to all the young lieutenants and told them I was off limits.
What did your parents think of the film?
My mom was well, they were both really proud, you know. I mean, who would have thought, graduate from high school and 2 years later I'm in a movie,
Mm-hmm.
you know? It's like, it doesn't happen in real life. So they were really, really, really proud, you know, especially I came back from the States and I had enough money, I bought my dad a car. So he was real impressed.
I love King Kong now, it's great.
So you had mentioned that your dad made sure that all the young lieutenants that you were off limits because you still are a beautiful classic beauty. What was it like knowing that you are that beautiful classic beauty that is that one character that kind of controls the beast, that kind of has that hand over it?
I did not think of myself as that.
You should.
I didn't. You know, when you're inside your own body, you don't, well, I hope most people think so. When you're inside your own body, you don't think that way, you know. And I didn't think about taming the beast. I was just trying to learn my lines and just
Survive.
and not get fired and try to every scene try to do better than I did before. So I didn't think about it that way. And I didn't even know that Tom Murad and I had an undercurrent of a boy-girl relationship until somebody pointed out, oh, you really was your boyfriend in the movie. And I thought, really? I didn't know that. I was so focused and so insecure for the whole time.
So all these years later, you get out of acting, and was there a specific reason why you decided to stop doing that?
I loved acting. I hated the business of acting. And again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I was a very young, naive girl. And I was exposed, as everybody in Hollywood is exposed to the sleaziness. And I did not.
Well, that doesn't happen anymore. That's.
And I didn't know how to handle it. I just felt uncomfortable, and I felt as long as I didn't go with the program, I'd never work, and I would rather not work than go along with the program. So, I would say that was a hard decision, but it really wasn't. Because I felt literally, and I'm not joking, if I stayed in And where I was at, I could do it now, but because I would say no easy. But then, where I was at, if I stayed in it, I would lose my soul. And so it was a very easy decision. I said, okay, I have my time, I have my experience, and now on to something else in my life.
So all these years go by, and
Don't say
all these years, 8 years go by, and this is, how often do you even bring this film up to your friends and family and people that you work with? What was it, 2015, she gets a phone call, and yeah, you want to pick up from there?
Well, let's start with the fact that I never told anybody I was in this movie, because once I heard that voice, I was so embarrassed.
The U.S. voice, yeah, the American.
And so I never told anybody that I was in the film, because once I was out of acting, I didn't have like acting friends. It wasn't my circle anymore, and so I just never brought it up at all. So in all these years go back, and in 2015, out of the blue, I'm at work, and I get a phone call, and he said, "Hi, my name is Brett Hominick, and I live in Japan." I said, "Oh my God, I used to live in Japan too." And he said, "I know, I've been looking for you." And I thought, for a second, what did I do that he And he proceeded to tell me that there was a fan base for the movie, and I almost fell off my chair. I had no idea. And the interesting thing is, the way he said he'd been looking for me for a long time, but Linda Miller's like Mary Smith, John Smith. It's just such a common name. In fact, when I first moved to LA, I'd get phone calls. "Are you the Linda Miller that's the Playboy Bunny?" Linda Miller that has.
Well, if there's a check coming, then yes, I am.
Are you the Linda Miller that has those wild parties at the beach? You know, so there's so many Linda Millers. But he said the way he found me is he was talking to a mutual friend who was my first love, Natsuki Yosuke, and he remembered my middle name. And so because of my middle name, he was able to track me down. And so I was like, oh no, I said, "Mom, you're not going to believe this, but people actually like this movie."
The title of that news article was like, "Classic movie star discovered at Powhatan" or something. I'm like, discovered? It sounds like a dinosaur. And I remember reading that, and I was like, it hasn't been that many years. And that was the first article I saw that you were mentioned, and Brett Hominick was looking for you.
Yeah. And so the fact that he knew my old boyfriends was actually more impressive than I could, keep calm, because at first when people call you, you gotta be careful what you say and all that. But he mentioned Natsuki's name, I said, okay, I'll talk to him,
Yeah.
So that's how it happened. He did the article in G-Fan, and then I had promised him I wouldn't do anything until the article came out, and I had been invited to Orlando with, I know it was with Takarada-san, but I don't know if Nakajima was, but I couldn't go because I had promised I wouldn't do anything, and then a week after the convention, then it came out, so.
So what was it like reuniting with them after all those years gone by? Did they remember you?
Yes.
They did. Good. Well, I mean, in that world, they made so many films after that.
Yeah.
The ball keeps rolling.
Well,
so.
he was already doing conventions at that
That's
time,
right.
so yeah, he would remember.
That one photo we have up here of you and Takarada and Nakajima, and then the clown puppet. That's about as perfect as you could ask for.
I was fortunate enough in February of 2016, I went to Japan and reunited with the two of them, and we did a couple of conventions together, which were totally different than what we have here in the States. And so actually, it was the first time I really talked to Nakajima-san, because the day I met him on the set, we didn't really talk, So I got to talk to them, and it was like, I hadn't been back, I left in '68, and I went back several times. I think 75 was the last one I went back to visit. And so from 75 to 2016, it was almost like a religious experience. It was so awesome to be back, and it had changed so much. people were taller. I was, I don't know. And now all the younger generation is taller, So I really enjoyed going back, and I enjoyed meeting with them. And then after that, Nakajima and I did 1 or 2 conventions together, and Takarado and I did, I think, 1 more convention together. Oh, 2 more. So it was great, It's like, I think of my life in segments. I've got the first part of my life, which was like a fairy tale, awesome. Second part is kind of hum-ho. And then the last half, or third, the last third is like, all of this has come up again in my life, and I appreciate it 5,000 times more than I would have back then. So it's like, I thank God that I had that experience, and I had the experience of not anything exciting happening, and then I have this, so. That's good.
What do you have to do to get you into Godzilla vs. Kong 2 as Lieutenant Susan Watson?
Yeah.
Break somebody's arm. Yeah, I would act again as long as it wasn't really challenging, because I haven't acted in years.
You are working on a project, though.
Maybe.
Yeah,
It's
well,
not-
there's something in the works, but it's not official.
We hope. There always, in Hollywood, there's always something in the works, but until you sign, it's not a deal. So I'm hopeful. Let's put it that way. Yeah, because I would like to do something.
So My Three Sons reboot.
Yeah.
It's going to be the other woman again.
No, they would have a different meaning nowadays.
Well, I guess, Jess, do you have any more questions?
What is it like? I know you were able to reunite with Takarada and Nakajima, and I know that Mehama was in it off of, she's a Bond girl, and then now she's there, and her character was the opposite of your good girl.
Yes,
What were you two able to meet? Did you wish you could reunite? Because it was, every film always has that good girl and the bad girl, and just watching that foil and that difference.
well, knowing she had just come off of Bond, I was intimidated, she kind of kept to herself, And so I didn't have, I didn't have the bravery to go up to her and introduce myself and, tell her what a fan I was. I kind of just laid back. And so we hardly ever said a word to each other, which I regret today. If it had been, if I am who I am today back then, I just gone out and said hello, or was happy to be working with you, because she may have been really shy too, I don't know,
Yeah.
So in fact, when I started doing conventions, I was the same way with other guests, and I would want to say hi, but I was nervous and afraid, but I challenged myself, and this time I went up and introduced myself to TJ, who I'd seen at conventions before, and Don Fry. So, pat myself on the back. I've done King Kong Estates, the Green Slime, which you all know, but I go to the convention with a lot of other people who are really, truly icons, that have been in a lot of things, and especially if it's Godzilla. So I always feel like they're the center of attention, and rightfully so. And so I would kind of be, not embarrassed, but just shy to extend myself. So.
Well, just think of it this way. You're the only Kong, really, leading lady that's accessible.
That is true, unfortunately.
So,
my fantasy, which is truly a fantasy, is all of us Kong girls would get together.
yeah, next year. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and open it up for questions, if anybody has a question. Oh, Kiefer, yes, sir.
I noticed in the photos, there's a photo of you with we just named Osman, he said he was, I believe, Turkish descent. At least in the background, there's a lot of photos.
Oh, okay.
50s up to, I think, early 70s. You were in, like, started your relationship. I think you had a quick scene.
Yeah, agent called Eddie Arab, and he's had a lot of foreign actors and models and stuff like that. And that's right, yeah. So
There he is, right there, yeah.
So you know, when you're on the set, there's a lot of downtime, and not everybody is working at the same moment, and so you know, you kind of just relax in between the scenes and stuff. And he just, I don't remember his name, I didn't remember much about him except I remember his face. And I remember that was a boat ride on the way to Oshima Island where, was it Mondo? Oh, Mondo Island is where we were going? Yeah. And in the film. And so we would just all, you know, just be together and have fun and just enjoy each other. A memorable thing was we had a bunch of Israelis as extras on the scene. And they came in one day just high as could be, not high on drugs, but just high as could be because it was the end of the 6-Day War. And then I remember that. Not him, but there's none of those people, but there were some young Israeli actors there. And so I remember that.
Yes?
What was your favorite part of filming Kong?
What was my
Favorite part of filming? Getting the paychecks.
Actually, being in Kong's hand was my favorite part. As uncomfortable as it was, it's like, this is, you know, you're the center of the universe when you're in his hand, you know. So I really enjoyed that, and then the blue screen behind, and Rhodes was so funny. I said to him, what do I do when there's no one there to, you know, act off of? And he told me this story. He said that when he had the scene with this woman that he had to kiss in the movie, she had really bad breath. So he, in his mind, he pictured a rose, and he kissed her, but he was really kissing the rose. And that's how he explained I had to use my imagination. And that was very helpful when he did that. He did a couple of things that were really helpful.
In the pink back there.
You had said that the conventions in Japan are very different from here. How are they different, or what are they like?
How are conventions in
Oh.
here?
They don't pay. They don't. You know, like here you sit somewhere and everybody comes in and they pay. The first two that we did, there were a bunch of people there, and we just got up and talked and joked around, and there was no payment, but it was for the fans. And the very last, people had taken their orders in advance, or they took the orders in advance and said, okay, we want 2 from here, 2 from here, 2 from here. So you sat down and you only signed what had been arranged for in advance. But it wasn't free, and you didn't actually get to talk to the fans like you can here. It wasn't as warm, I think.
I think you had a question there. Go ahead.
Do you have like any connection with the character of Kong at all, or like do you like watch the rest of his movies, or do you like have?
I haven't seen a lot of Kong movies, but I went and saw Skull Island, which I really liked. Yeah. And then Godzilla vs. Kong, I adored. I wore my, Team Kong t-shirt. Or Team Godzilla, And so we walked out of the movie and I said, we both won, I like the special effects because they do so many things. But I don't know, it's like the heart. Sometimes the heart is not there like it was in the olden days. Olden days, I'm really
Use those words, right?
olden days.
Anybody else? Oh, all the way over there.
Do you have any advice for aspiring actresses?
Advice for aspiring.
I have that on my sheet. Thank you. I forgot about that one. Perfect.
The vice president.
Yeah, don't do it.
In 2019 is the first time I met Nigel in the interview. He asked me that question, and just off the top of my head, I said, don't do it. But that's not true. If you have a passion, I don't think you can go into acting and expect any success unless you are so driven and so determined and so in love with the craft. Because at every turn, they're going to tell you you're too small, you're too tall, you're too white, you're too black, you're too blonde, you're too skinny, you're too fat. You're going to hear that 99% of the time. So you have to have a thick skin and know who you are. You have to really know who you are at your core. Because it's a really tough business. It's even tougher now when I was doing it. But you have to be passionate about what you do, or don't even bother doing it. Well, I shouldn't say that. You do what you want. But I would say to be successful, you have to be extremely passionate and driven.
I would add on to that because I actually work in the industry. I highly recommend reading books on business to know that you're not being cheated out of your money that is rightfully yours, and also to make sure that you learn from those above you because you have to be very cunning in the industry, and you don't have to be cruel, but you also have to be very Machiavellian to watch out for yourself because you don't want to end up leaving for all the right reasons. You don't want to sell your soul in that. No.
That's very good advice in any business.
Yes.
Oh, yes, sir.
What did you think the first time you heard David's stuff? And did you ever have any connection or know of the woman who did the voice?
I
I did not know the woman that did it. If I had,
Don't go home, no.
she would have been better. Did not know the woman who did it, and if I had seen Arthur again, I would have slapped him. I was so. That's why I never told anybody I was in the movie. I mean, literally, when I started going to conventions, I had friends say, "What are you doing? What are you going for a convention for?" And they had no idea I was in the movie. I mean, all my modeling pictures were separate, movie was separate, and yeah, I hated it.
Did you see it like on TV, or did you go to a movie theater?
I heard it on TV. I've never seen the movie on the big screen yet. I heard it on TV, and not until 2016 was I brave enough to watch the video. Some friends of mine in Texas, we had a King Home party, high school friends, and so I said, okay, I'm just gonna not be so obsessed with how I look or how I act, and just enjoy the movie. And that was the first time, but still that voice was just gone. And you know, and for a while I thought, God, was my voice so bad they didn't want to ever use it?
Well, there is a scene, actually somebody put a YouTube video up, and it says something like, Linda Miller's real voice in King Kong Escapes. And it's a scene where they're pulling Rose out of the ice chamber, the ice jail, and you're like screaming.
Oh yeah, they kept my scream.
That's your real scream. So that's a nice little tidbit. And I honestly, I wouldn't have even thought about that unless that person had put that YouTube video up. So somebody's looking out for us.
Yeah, that was the only part of the movie that was my voice.
Yes, sir. Godzilla 2014.
It's actually confirmed.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you willing to share any of your beauty secrets?
Beauty secrets.
Thank you for asking.
Well, look at the time.
Have a mom and a dad with good genes. That's the best piece. I mean, I never was one, when you know, after I stopped being a model, I think back and thought, you should have done this and this. I mean, I always had a weight problem, you know, so I never really tackled that, and so I didn't do anything special. I'm absolutely adamant that I, you know, take my makeup off at night and don't go to bed with makeup on. Just the normal things you should do. Try to, you know, put moisturizer on and all that stuff.
Good.
Sorry,
That's
I know
okay.
what you wanted to ask, and I wanted to ask. I think there was another part where you had your voice, it was when Kong was fighting a sea snake, or he was about to, and you say, look, it's Kong. It sounded like your voice. It didn't sound like a dove.
I don't think so. I think the only thing in my voice was a scream.
I don't know, it sounded really different, but I was thinking,
I'll
if
have
you,
to go back and listen to it because I don't remember that.
but I was thinking, if you're ever available, if you want to, I would be able to do a fan cut.
We're going to completely redub the movie with your real voice. I have the script right here. Let's start right now.
I'm not joking, I can do it.
Well,
I mean, I could do it, and you could just send the lines, and I have a way to like remove the voice and then put yours in, and I can send it to you.
What if the real voice doesn't even sound as good as the
It'll be better than that one.
when I did King Kong Fantasia, it was really important to me that I had Linda use her real voice at the end of that. Because to me, at that time, her real voice was never heard in any dub of the film. So that was sort of a personal accomplishment for me that I really felt good about.
I appreciate this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And having Susan Watson say a line from the MonsterVerse movies was just a cool, like, almost like a multiverse type thing. So I'm really proud of that. Yes, sir. Black hat back there.
I just want you to know that I've been hammering on J.D. Lee to have you come back every year.
Yeah.
All right. I guess what? One more question, then we're done.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I gotcha. Black hat back there. Yeah.
Curious, did you know that the comics games now actually got VHS miniseries? It was really hard to see the movie until 2005.
That is, it never got released on VHS or DVD until 2005. It was only on, in fact, the first time I saw it, my dad's brother had a copy he recorded off at AMC, and he had to record a copy of it for me to send me through the mail. So that's the first time I ever saw the movie, and it was one of those really hard to find films until Peter Jackson, Peter Jackson's Kong kind of inspired Universal to pull it out and release it. So, thank you everybody. Thanks for